there is a lot of things being corrected as we see people are being put in positions that were wrongfully screwed over. That included the likes of Stuart Scheller, the lieutenant colonel that essentially was let go because he wanted accountability in Afghanistan. That includes Matthew Lohmeyer, the let go lieutenant colonel as well from the Space Force, and various others that have essentially been in trouble with the Department of Defense. And we're now seeing a correction of the pendulum swing the other way. I know you guys are tired of hearing about this, but this is a full circle, okay? Because we know that they did allow service members to come back into the military for not getting the COVID-19 vaccination. Now, the whole backstory of that, of them coming in, is what I never knew about. And this is what Stuart Scheller had to show on his personal Facebook page talking about this. First, people need to understand the difference between involuntary and voluntary separation. If a service member refused the shot and was forced out via administrative separation, it was involuntary. If they weren't, it was voluntary. We're going to pause real quick because it pretty much just meant you had to hold out to the very last second until they did everything to shove you out of the military. And we did see certain circumstances of that were interesting, especially with the Catherine Arnett situation where she was actually sent to the brig and various other things on top of that, because there were orders that piled on top where they would sandwich others together. I don't know what happened with her situation, but that was covered. It said if they weren't, it was voluntary. And they say, insert all the qualifications about people being ostracized, career derailed, re-enlistments not accepted, and undue command influence leading to the exit for an individual. For this argument, if they weren't administratively separated, the situation is still considered voluntary separation. Involuntary separations rate back pay and time served from separation to reentry. For many, this means an automatic promotion. Voluntary does not offer these incentives. However, voluntary separations can still apply for the involuntary separation board process, same as those who are administratively separated. All scenarios will be examined by the board. And it's great that there is a process to do this in order to be able to advocate for yourself. But it's still unfortunate because if you got out and you're like, oh, I'll just sign away and say I'm willing to get out and that's it, you kind of screwed yourself and you didn't know that. And it sucks because you can't look back and say darn it, I wish I just made the good fight. But also at those times where you're like, I don't want to stay in and not have to feel purpose or be kicked to the side, essentially. I could understand people not wanting to do this. So it's going to be a slippery slope. And it sounds like there are a lot of numbers games with this where people have actually wanted to come back in, and he does cover that. He said, second, the term back pay is confusing. The way it works, the government calculates the amount that would have been earned if the service member remained in service and then subtracts the money earned once they got out, claimed on taxes, including disability payments that don't show up on taxes. So for a lot of people, this isn't much money. Yet we did have at least one warrior who got a six-figure payout upon reentry. A couple more in the pipeline may get the same. I'm assuming these warriors were living off-grid, sharpening knives until they got the call. So looking from this information, if you were getting disability payments, say you were at 100%, getting almost $4,000 a month, and that's for a lot of people more than they were making in the military. So if they wanted to come back in, they would essentially have to probably earn less money, especially if they were like E4 and below or E5 and below, definitely at that point. So with promotions, it's like you don't get to go back and count that time of service that you were screwed over because you would have been serving, and that would have counted towards retirement. And then on top of that, you also have people that are going to sit here and not have promotions because they had to go against the board or, some other type of promotion process where it's not like, oh, did you meet the cut or did you not meet the cut or whatever that is. There's a lot of legality to this. I think it's going to be a lot of lawyers involved. He says to re-enter the service, all an individual needs to do is contact the recruiter. The recruiter pushes the individual to fill out an application/security screener and then directs them back to their local MEPS medical center. Voluntary separations re-enter the service quickly. For involuntary after MEPS, the package goes to review, BCNR, all that stuff. Once approved, DFAS, the people that pay the military, calculates the back pay, and then an offer letter is given to the service member. At that point, the service member can decide if the offer is worth accepting. Again, if voluntary separation people want to request a board, they can do so, but they won't have the same priority as involuntary. And I think that's just because of legal things that are at stake in trying to settle the cases that are probably the worst, which makes sense as far as a precedent is being said here. But if I was voluntary, I'd probably get a lawyer and be like, let's go to this board and let's fight this. Because it sounds like they're up for negotiation, where I'm questioning, like, could you get time served, for the years that you were gone? That's a whole other debacle that I would like to know. If anybody goes through that, please let me know, or anyone that's going through this process. If you're watching this video, I'd love to hear what your standing is with the military, or if you came back. He says, now, for all the horror stories about the process that happened before 1 May 2025, it only confuses the issue. This process wasn't rocky and rolling until then, so understand that. And since creating the board process, not a single package has been denied, but many packages have been sent back. Not a single package has been denied, but many packages have been sent back due to administrative incompleteness. This will be something we can look at more closely, because I'm sure this is frustrating to many who experienced it. And it's kind of interesting that it took a long time. I remember, I think it was 2024 that they were said they could come back, and or maybe even lingering from 2023. So, yeah, this is a big boat to steer, but unfortunately there were thousands of people that were not allowed to stay in the military due to their stance on the situation. He goes over the numbers and says, by the numbers, the military has had 738 involuntary separation individuals reach out to the recruiters and express interest in reentry. 69 of those currently have packages at the board. 17 of them have been reinstated. So by those numbers of involuntary, the people that are already approved, submitted, that's 2%. Then you also have the people that are pending, which I could add those, and that would be 11% if none of the packages were denied, according to his stats that he's sharing here. He says, it is somewhat eyebrow-raising that 652 people have expressed interest in returning to service and don't have a package at the board for review. So I've tasked the services to follow up with everyone on the list, and I will personally go by name for all 652 to get an update. I'm being told that most of them who express interest find out about the back pay and think about the reality of military life/requirements and decide not to do it. Well, yeah, I mean, if you're going to come back and get no back pay at all, or any kind of incentive, it's going to be hard. And so I wonder how they're going to negotiate ranks and stuff like that, because I would say, while they may not be able to guarantee a back pay, and that we're like, hey, all my peers in my year group are now at E5 sergeant or whatever, I want to be at that and up for the next rank. That might be a promotion, because some people, that's like a quality of life, where they're going back and they're going to get housing off base. They're going to get other benefits, opportunities to promotion programs such as officer, maybe, where they might be able to apply, because some of these are locked out at the E5 position, where I'm like, that would be a valid point to come back if they were able to do so. He says, by the numbers for voluntary, a total of 41 have expressed interest to return to the service, 17 submitted the paperwork, and 3 have returned to service. So he doesn't give the total numbers of voluntary separations here to show percentage-wise. However, I want to tell you that over half the people that were but I want to tell you the people that were voluntary separations, over half of those people already have a package, and 3 are already in. So that shows the process is pretty quick if people are trying to come back. And I wonder the timeline, because honestly, I feel like the further people get away from military service, maybe they were kicked out in 2021, it's been about 4 years. So imagine they could go to school, college, and have a whole nother career at this point, where a lot of people are probably going to take that, because they probably see paychecks that might be bigger than the U.S. military right now. He says, if anyone has questions or feelings they are being mistreated in the process, they can always email the longest email in the world, which is routed to the Defense Department directly at this website. I'll have it on the screen. It says, now, if you read this far, I'm sure you or your loved one has been forced out of the military based on the vaccine. I took interest in this initiative because I understand what it's like to be treated unfairly by the military. I was in prison in solitary confinement as a quotation serious threat and quotation flight risk, both which were blatantly untrue, and I would argue illegal. When I got out of the brig, my medical records and investigation were released to a reporter still working in the Pentagon, and ironically, who is still reporting on me. Why do I point this out? Because my impression is that many who exit the service because of poor treatment over the shot refusal want retribution. I get tagged every day with posts questioning when commanders at every level of the military will be thrown in jail for illegally forcing the COVID vaccine. That's not going to happen. Time to move forward. I agree that it's not going to happen, because when you look at where people are saying that there were rights that were violated and things like that, there is too much nuance to place blame here. It's like the Spider-Man meme, essentially, where it's well, I only covered this little bit, I only covered that little bit. There's not really a lot to just blame on one person, of the main person, I would say, for this. And I think those legal battles are going to be hard. And if somebody wants some kind of, retribution or whatever for this. I'm like, you can get a lawyer and sue the federal government if you really are wanting to, like, say you have some health issue from this or whatever else. I mean, it's going to cost a lot of money, but who knows? Maybe we'll be the people that are on the commercials for the mesothelioma and exposure to asbestos and all that stuff, later on in our lives. I don't know. He says, right now, Americans who exit the military because of COVID shot have an opportunity to re-enter and continue serving. If they go through the board process, it's not going to happen immediately. The process is not perfect, but the team is taking it seriously. PNR currently has an ASD who was a voluntary COVID separation. There is a senior advisor in the SecNav who was a voluntary COVID separation. Our new Senate confirmed USD PR has a family member directly impacted by this issue. He's committed to fixing it, as am I. Secretary Hegseth leading the way is passionate about us getting this right, and we don't want to let him down. I hope the department can get everyone's back and who wants to serve this great country. I believe system reforms will soon incentivize making tough decisions more than pleasing superiors. I hope in the future the service is filled with people brave enough to stand their ground and challenge leaders lacking courage. Stu. Now, according to the Defense Department, from what I'm seeing on here, they were saying that over the course of 500 days, beginning in 2021, nearly 8,000 active duty military members and reserve members were involuntarily separated from the service. So these numbers are not crazy. Like, we're not seeing thousands here. We're seeing a smaller percentage for sure. And I do want to say something that I have to commend Stuart Scheller on this situation, because he is in charge right now of officer promotions. That's really his only lane. But when you have a job and you see like an adjacent side quest or task and you're like, we could ask about that. That shows we're having people in right places asking questions, even if it is something on the other side of their aisle or on the other side of their lane that is not necessarily what they're appointed to do, which he's still doing that job, and they just released footage of that as well. So I commend him for that. There are people that are on both sides of the fence of this, kind of looking at this because they're upset, but they understand. But let me read some of these. Clay Clem says, I get the quotations we must move forward, but not applying accountability is just providing top cover to people that shouldn't be in leadership positions or in positions that implement policy. I'm not saying to roll out the gallows, but there should be some form of accountability to redress grievances and to prevent future misconduct. Justice is a very tricky subject, and if you want to find injustices in the world, it's pretty easy to find them. And it sucks that I think we're asking Americans that raise their right hand to be the bigger person than people that should have been the bigger people in these situations. That's just what I'm going to say. Put that out there. This person, Diallo Daoud, I think is how you say it. This is a solid breakdown. Appreciate the clarity. One thing worth highlighting is that significant number of service members chose to separate voluntarily, not because they wanted to leave, but because they were trying to avoid retaliation, further isolation, or pressure that made staying feel untenable. For many, it wasn't a planned or truly voluntary decision. It was survival. The aftermath of these individuals often was devastating. Careers cut short, benefits lost, families affected, and sense of betrayal by the institution they serve with pride. While the board process offers a pathway back, the reality is that a lot of those who voluntarily separated did so under intense pressure in unfair circumstances. That context needs to be considered when we look at the numbers and outcomes. It's good to see movement in the right direction, just hoping these voices don't get left out of the process. Semper Fi, Sir Stuart Scheller, People's Voice. Yeah, so I love the direction this is going, and it seems like people are truly interested in this and were affected by it, and it sounds like people are in the right places. Now, as this process goes on and you see these numbers creep up, the 8,000 people we lost, I know we're not getting them all back, but hopefully we have people that are recruiting hard, and those numbers apparently have been met to fill the pipe, and they've already been working and trying to fulfill that over the past couple of years, and it looks like everyone has done that, and maybe these people coming back will be another added benefit to that as people are worried about 2027 and China and all those things. But I want to know what you guys think about these policy rollouts, because I never heard about this being how this process went. I just heard there's going to be a process, and I can't find anything about it besides this post, but I'm glad someone is willing to expose what is happening so that way maybe other people can actually volunteer or know more about this.